ES Audio.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.
Hello and welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast. I'm Lawrence Dallaglio, and it was, of course, round 3 of the Six Nations this weekend, and the Premiership was in full swing too. So there's plenty of rugby to talk about. Joining me to do just that from the Evening Standard, it's, of course, Steve Cording and Evening Standard's rugby correspondent, Nick Purewal. Hi, Steve. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Lawrence. How are you?
Hi, Lawrence.
Very well indeed. I feel a bit of a fraud, really, because I've just come back from Rome. I had 4 minutes work, really. 3 minutes was a bit of a hit before the game, and then I delivered about a minute with Gabriel Clark after the game. But I have to say, and we'll get on to the Six Nations later, I was thoroughly entertained. I think I really enjoyed that match. And I was rather there than in Cardiff.
Yeah, you sounded actually like one of England's replacements. I mean, they got 14 seconds. I suppose you got a bit longer than that, didn't you?
Now, listen, mate, we'll talk about that another time. Our guest this week has spent more than 20 years as a coach, spanning both club and national level, and both codes as well. He's currently head coach for London Irish. It is Les Kiss. Les, a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us. It's always better to talk to a coach or a player the day after he's won a game, but I'm sure you've put the world to rights already and you're preparing for next week and you've forgotten about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, look, it's never nice, the day after, or 2 days after a loss, really, it never sort of sits right. But in our game, you get used to the ups and downs. And as I always do, a couple of beers later, I can also see through the fog and see some hope for the next week.
Well, listen, before we put any more rugby questions to you, Les, Steve, we mentioned your birthday. I think you share it with a few people like Elizabeth Taylor, like the guitarist from Iron Maiden.
Oh, but you got better knowledge than me. I didn't know that, really. Oh, I should have looked that up. Yes, my birthday today. Got a nice little birthday present yesterday from my football team. Went to watch the round ball at Wembley, Manchester United winning. So took my son, which was a nice day out, and a bit of cake later on, I think.
Les, let's ask you a little bit more about your life at London Irish, if you don't mind. I know that you've coached in a lot of different places. You've had incredible success. You've been London Irish, I think, about 5 years now, working alongside Decky. When you first came to Irish, did you see yourself being here, still here after 5 years?
Yeah, you don't sort of plan 5 years out, I don't think. A person in my role, a coach that's moving from country to country, being Australian, you tend to do that more than, say, an Englishman. You just probably move across the ditch or something or do something like that. But that is the struggle. I think from the family perspective, I think we've moved about 6-7 times in the last 12 years, different houses, even though we lived in Dublin for 8 years. Went to Ulster, bought a place up there, got the sack, sold that place. Now I'm at London Irish. You plan 2-3 years out. And when we first joined it, when Mick Crossan rang me, he just wanted to make sure we got back into London and established ourselves as a force again in some form. So we came back in, rode the championship for a year to get back up. And from there, it's just been step by step. I must say, though, it was a gift, I think, and I think Decky feels the same, to actually be introduced to rugby in England through the championship. The people involved in that league are unbelievable. The coaches are savvy. They're old bull versus young bull. They just know the nuances of the game. It was a great way to see English rugby first up through the championship and travelling down to Penzance and all that. Bedford's ground with the big slope. Just those nice, great experiences. I think it was a gift to have been introduced to English rugby in that way. But now we're back with the big dogs. It's just been a slow burn, probably slower than we probably like, but we are making positive steps, that's for sure.
And Les, for you, people might not realise this, but your own playing career was in rugby league. It's been a fascinating sort of coming together. I'll never forget when Shaun Edwards first came to Ross. I mean, obviously he's a player that I admired, that whole Wigan generation.
Yeah.
He said it's the same post, same pitch, that if you take away scrums, lineouts, breakdown, and, the fact that every time the ball's on the floor, there's a contest for possession, it's the same game. So, there obviously is a difference, but, you coach London Broncos, you've been involved in rugby union now for over 20 years, so people wouldn't maybe remember the fact you played league. What was it that made you, were you a crystal ball gazer and you realised that actually that there was something, different about union, or you just done everything you wanted to in league and decided to go for it?
It basically came down to, I think it was Muggleton was the early sort of guy in Australia that went into rugby coaching.
Yes.
And I just got phoned out of the blue by the Springboks come and do this. And so I was headhunted, and I said, well, why not? Let's give it a go. So you can imagine heading off to South Africa as your first gig. It was quite challenging, actually. I think I was one of the first foreigners to ever worked there. But I wouldn't be dissimilar to Shaun Edwards. There are a lot of similarities about the game, and a lot of those similarities come down to attitude and committing to the simple things that you do well. If you get those things right, other things grow from it. But if I'd said the biggest challenge for me in the game, I love the tactical variations of the line out and scrum. I love it. I love the way you can position things defensively and attack wise and maneuver and all those types of things. But the biggest challenge was me to get my head around the breakdown area. It was just a different area, and the advantage line linked with that. But every month the light would go on. I was pretty fortunate to work with some pretty smart guys like Andre Voss and those guys early, from the Springboks, Percy Montgomery, just a thinker of the game, Cornet Cricket, all those types of blokes. And each month it'd just click, that's what it is. That's the speed of the ball. That's the presentation. That's the advantage line and the nuances that come with that. And once you got your head around that, I think 6 months, 7 months into it, it just sort of flowed nicely.
I had a very different conversation the other way around, actually, and not many people know this, but when I was a very young kid, I was still trying to find my way in rugby union. I think I was I hadn't quite played for England. I had a phone call from Brian Smith, the Australian Rugby League coach, I think, and he was coaching at Bradford Northern.
Yeah.
And he said to me, Lawrence, we'd really like to sign you for Bradford Northern. And, it was very, very flattering. I was a very young man. And I said to him, look, I just got to stop you right there. There's a couple of things that's not going to work here. One, I don't feel I deserve to be signed by for anyone, really. I haven't made my debut for England. I really want to fulfill my dream of playing for England. But I said, what you're asking me to do is incredible, but you're asking me to persuade my wife to move from London to Bradford. So
exactly. Yeah.
I said there is two words here: geographical immobility, or actually there's one other verse called divorce. Really. So, you've moved 5 times. Persuading your family to go from Australia to beach in Cape Town is one thing. Going up to Bradford Northern, which I'm sure would have been a pretty good education.
Yeah. It's funny, and I hope this is taken the right way, but in Australia in the 90s, I was in league. And then late 90s, I moved into union. But there was Richard Harry. He was the prop for after dinner speeches or whatever. There was always a debate in Australia. What's the better game, rugby league or rugby union? And obviously he'd have his bent on it. But he said, look, if you play rugby, you see the world. You play league, you see Wigan. And it used to just bring it out and it'd be a laugh. And I hope it's not taken the wrong way, but it sort of laid it home. Once I joined union, I could just see a world of possibilities in terms of how you broaden as a person. It's great exposure out there. The variation of the games in different countries is massive compared to league. I love league. It's still the game that I was brought up in, but I'm a rugby union coach now. I've been there coaching this longer than I coach league. And it's just in me now, and I just love the game. Talking about Wigan, when I coached the London Broncos, I'm not sure if you know this, but I coached Shaun Edwards. And when he played there, a competitor through and through, isn't he? A man that you just respect fully. And I remember one day I had to make a decision. I said, mate, you're on the bench. I'm going to start another guy ahead of you. And Struth, you've just felt the room just change when you told him. But he came on with 20-30 to go and just nailed it. He is one competitor, a great bloke. I loved spending time with him, but he's probably one of the best coaches I've seen, that's for sure.
Les, I spoke to one of your former colleagues, actually, Tony Ray, before coming on, because I wanted to do a bit of background research on you. But obviously, if you do a search on Les Kiss on the internet...
Yeah, don't Google Les Kiss without putting rugby after it, okay?
Yeah, you have to put rugby after it, or otherwise you do get some questionable results. But Tony was telling me you've just come back from your daughter's wedding, and he asked me to ask you about your flipper in the nets in Mumbai.
Oh, Struth. Yeah, this is we love cricket, Aussies, as you guys. The Ashes series is brilliant. But I was fortunate enough to get a week off. So the Bath match, I wasn't off. I put the other coaches in charge. So it took a week, 10 days. My daughter got married in Goa. But before we got to Goa, myself and Tony met up with our better halves in Mumbai. And we did a bit of a jeep tour. And we saw this middle area in the middle of Bombay, about say 5 cricket pitches long, in that area, with all these clay pitches and all these young people, old people playing cricket on all these variation of pitches. So Tony and I say, well, let's get in there and have a bit of a crack at this. So we go in there, and suddenly this group says, come over here. A couple of great lads had said, let's play a bit of cricket. So I've got the ball and Tony's bat, and I'm throwing down my flippers, and I got them 2 or 3 times. Then I have a bat, and then the Indians would bowl at me. and I'm batting away. It was one of the most surreal things I've ever done, playing on these old clay pitches against people who are just playing it out there for the fun of it. It was bloody brilliant. And, I did a bit of research on it. The likes of a Sachin Tendulkar and those sort of guys actually grew up in those pitches. It was unbelievable, to tell you the truth, and a great experience, as was my daughter's wedding. Fantastic time and a family time to get away and do that.
It must be great to have an opportunity like that, to have a bit of a break, as much as obviously be at such an important family event. But I mean, are those the kinds of things that you need to keep you fresh with the coaching?
I think sometimes you get so deep into it that you can't see some things outside of it. And one of the things that has been very important to me is to ensure that everyone in our rugby program, and you see this in leadership seminars and books, but if you're not there, that it can still operate. And if you don't do that, I don't think you're in front of the curve as you should be. And this was one challenge. We challenge our coaches, and particularly people in our medical department, our S&C department. If there's something big that you need, let us know and we'll make it work. And if someone needs to go to a family event, if there's something that's important that needs to be done, ask and we will work it out. That drives you to make sure that everyone around you knows what is required and what is necessary. So not only does it get you over your thing that if I'm not there, it can't work, you actually build trust and confidence in the whole program. And we encourage that in our environment, because it's a season in the premiership, it's a marathon, and you've got to be able to find a space to take a breath and touch base with family or touch base with something else that just gives you something to fresh you up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Les, we know the season's full of highs, hopefully more highs than lows. You built a great community down at the GTech Stadium in Brentford. What's coming up in the next few weeks that you can tell us about?
We've got some big matches coming up, Newcastle away, then Sale at home. Massive weekends for us and for those clubs as well. The following week, which is Paddy's weekend, actual St. Patrick's weekend, we've got the final against Exeter in the Prem Cup at home. But the following week is our big event, which is the 25th of March at 5:30 kickoff. We play Saints in our St. Patrick's, and I've been told it's a party day. And as you know, if you put the Irish and St. Patrick's together, it's going to be a party, win, lose, or draw. And I was saying earlier to the lads there, Lawrence, I just hope we get the different result. I know that the boys will party regardless, the crowd and the spectators, but we need a different result against Saints. They're going well. It will be a massively entertaining game. There's no doubt about that. Both teams will actually test each other with the ball and play and the skill sets, but it'll be a massive day for us. Not only do we have match day, but there's carnivals beforehand. There's some great opportunities for people to go to the fan village, etc. We've got a choir that's got hundreds of children from local schools. They're going to sing Fields of Athenry. We're just trying to engage with the community more and more as we get our roots deeper into London.
Listen, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I know as a coach and as a player, there's always a challenge when you've got these big games and we've got to market our sport. But actually, you've got a chance to win a trophy with the week before. And that is there's only 3 trophies available. So to win one, to get a bit of silverware, it would be great if you could do that. Obviously, you've got to beat a good side. And then I suppose the challenge for you as coaches is, if you win a trophy, you're going to have a good night out, you're going to reflect, you're going to celebrate, but then you've got to get your heads on the following week. And if you were to lose that game, the big disappointment, you've still got to somehow get your heads on. I mean, that's a real challenge, isn't it? As a coach, week to week, you're dealing with these emotions with players. It's a big couple of weeks for the club if you think about it, because it's so tight in that top 4. I just saw the table just before we came on. One match win, you beat Saints potentially there. You obviously got 2 other games. You could be up in the playoffs just at the right time.
Absolutely. I think that's where, as an organisation, we're finding out what it is to compete at the top. Learning what it takes to win, how to take a loss and then bounce back is something that's been a journey over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think we're slowly understanding what that is as an organisation as a whole, but also from the locker room. And one of the key parts of that, and you'll know what I mean by this, Lawrence. You would have been key in this in the teams you're involved in. Leadership's massive in that, because the key leaders in the group, they know the buttons to push in a locker room at any given time. And if we win, we'll lean on them. Yep, a couple of beers, boys, but we're going to be ready to train now. And allowing that decision to be able to be blend between the key coaches and the key leadership is massive for us. If we lose, how do we close the gap with something positive and end up back on land at Hazelwood at the right time, in the right mindset? How do we manage that day? So as much as it's a coaching challenge, it's something that you've got to build with your key leaders. And We're pretty lucky with a couple that we've got there in Matty Rogerson, Paddy Jackson, Rob Simmons, Adam Coleman, Ben Loader. They're the key guys that we lean on. And that's important because it is a massive 2 weeks. And Saints match could be so bloody vital for both of us.
Yeah, well, listen, we wish you all the very best for that. And I'm sure that there's tickets still available. So that's St. Patrick's Day parties on the 25th of March, Premiership fixture against Northampton Saints. We shall definitely look forward to that.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.
Now we want to get stuck into this weekend Six Nations action. Steve, do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so Lawrence, you're obviously out in Rome for the game for ITV. Italy lost, unfortunately, but played really well, 34-20 to Ireland. Felt like a bit of a closer game than the result actually was, didn't it, Lol? And I think if Italy can stop those turnovers, then there's every chance that they could give Wales a real test in 10 days' time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, one of the best test matches of the weekend, really. Take nothing away from France-Scotland, which had a lot of drama, but there was one score in it with 10 minutes to go. Given that Italy had conceded 4 tries before half-time, they were really staring, backs against the wall. And look, I mean, Italy, there was nothing that you could say other than just to applaud the players. They didn't finish the right side of the result, but there is enormous progress being made in that group. There is a belief within there, if they continue in, in the way that they're playing, that they will get results. And they played the number 1 and number 2 ranked side in the world, France and Ireland, and they've come up just short. I mean, England was a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it, for them? They didn't go well. It was a scrappy game. But, if they play anywhere near that level against Wales, they've got every chance of winning that game. So, look, they're making massive progress. I think they've defined how they want to play. I mean, there was times when I'm thinking that they've gone 3 phases, they've not got over the gain line. They're in that really dangerous kind of minefield zone where if you give away a penalty, you're in trouble, and the next 5 minutes of the game is down in your own 22 defending. But they stuck with it, and a couple of times they had to absorb pressure in the second half. And as I said, to be close to Ireland with 10 minutes to go, I thought was magnificent. And I mean, Ireland are they're this lovely mix at the moment. They left, 5 or 6 top-class players out. It's going to change the nature of their performance ever so slightly, but they learned something about themselves. They learned a bit of depth. The thing is, they didn't leave just world-class players out. They left the personality of the team out. People like Sexton, Furlong. What Ireland have got this kind of mixture of what I'd call old-school rugby players, people that are so old-school they played with me and against me. And the modern-day professional doesn't really... I mean, they're incredibly professional, but they don't say an awful lot. They're not as vocal. And it's not just on the field, it's off the field as well. You get this kind of swagger that goes with people like Sexton and Furlong, and there's a bit of chat and a bit of banter, and they're having a laugh with the coaching, but they know when to switch it on. And I think Ireland are well placed. They've got that. They've got the new era professional, and then they've got this young group who are coming through who are like really fearless, who their progress, like Doris and Keenan, their progress has been phenomenal.
When Eddie Jones picks up the phone, Les, and gives you a call and says, how do I stop this Irish team? What would you tell him?
Oh, it's bloody difficult at the moment. A lot of people say they're a machine. They are, but I think there's more to it. They're a fluid organism that just finds space at the right time and the right timing of that space. Their timing's impeccable at the moment. I can't see them not winning the Six Nations. They truly know who they are, and I think that's the big plus. And they know when they're under pressure how to get their way out of it. And Italy, I've got to say, are now finding out who they can be. And at least they've got their teeth into saying, we can play this way. They didn't get under pressure and just box kick the hell out of it. They said, let's keep backing ourselves and find out. And they failed a couple of times, but they failed against 2 of the best teams, in those games. It doesn't make them a failure. If they go away from it, that makes them a failure. They've got to keep backing themselves in that style. But I think Ireland has to be in the favourites for the World Cup. I think a home ground advantage for France puts them right at the top there. I think South Africa are comfortable who they are and how they play. New Zealand, it won't take them long. They know it's sitting underneath. It's bubbling. They won't be too far away.
Saturday tea time. Nick, you were in Cardiff for the 2010 win over Wales, which I was reading today is actually the biggest win in Cardiff since 2003, which is probably when you were playing in that game, Lawrence. But with 72 kicks from hand, I have to say it probably wasn't the greatest spectacle. And you've interviewed Max Malins today in the Evening Standard, and he's defended the kicking, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, 2003 was the last time Wales got the wooden spoon, so there's no coincidence there. I mean, England's situation, what I was sort of writing today was saying that, had they gone in a different direction and had it been either Scott Robertson or Ronan O'Gara, we'd have seen a very different, attacking England. It sort of stands to reason that a team will be, built on the image of its coach, and pragmatism is a very fair way to look at Steve Borthwick and what he's doing. And I think there's a massive humility to his let's walk before we can run approach. And so that shows great strengths of his personality. And these are all attributes that make him a really, really great person, and why the players respect him so much. And, he works probably harder than anyone else in that setup. And I think he's being very realistic about where they are and where they've got to go to. And I think that, the tactic to go to the air paid massive dividend. And I think one of the other reasons he's saying they're doing that is because he doesn't think they're fit enough to play the style he wants them to play. And I think he's obviously quite worried about, say, England sort of pushing through 8, 9, 10 phases, not making the kind of inroads they want to, continuing to push on, getting turned over and getting caught out on a sort of 1-2 phase score in the other direction. So I think they're being very conservative at the moment. I can understand that. I can also understand why some fans are a bit sort of frustrated with it, but I don't think it's the craziest thing to do in the world, given he's only been coaching them for about 3 weeks and he's asking them to commit to massive changes. And within what they faced on the day, they did very well. But I think they're probably quite realistic about the fact that they've got a long way to go as well.
Yeah, Lawrence, pragmatic, wasn't it, more than anything else, I guess?
I didn't like the performance, but it was a big step forward for England because they've won away from home against a really tough opponent in the Six Nations, Wales. So I think they did take a step forward, but it was only a step forward. And let's be honest, when you watch the quality that's going on around them, they're a long way away from that. But the good news is we're not going to get someone pulling the wool over our eyes in a press conference. The coach and the players will give it to you as it is. It's like this is where we need to get to, and it's going to take us time. So I'm okay with that.
And probably the game at the weekend probably was the final game, which was France against Scotland. Scotland, no Grand Slam for them again, unfortunately, but they did have opportunities and they were in the game right until the end. There was 2 red cards in that game, one of which, Les, probably made you wince when Mohamed Hahous took out Ben White. It's probably the games like that you have to watch through your fingers, do you, in case any of your players get injuries?
Yeah, you don't like to see that, particularly if it's your own player. But Ben, he's on fire at the moment, I think. Ben White, he's playing exceptionally well. I've got to take my hat off to Scotland, though. I think they've stepped forward from previous seasons. I think that's obvious. You've got Russell in the right headspace. You've got a forward pack in front of them that will die for each other. Yeah, they're little things that you need in place, the fundamental basis of why you're there, the attitude, the commitment, the basics right. They're doing most of those things right. Hugh Jones running beautiful lines. Yeah, there's some really nice stuff that's happening there. But I do think France are just that step above still, and they proved that points difference. I think is proven that's the class that they do have at home, and that's something that is a massive favour for them going into the World Cup.
Yeah. So let's move on to our players of the weekend. Lawrence, who are you going to choose? Was it anybody from yesterday's game?
I mean, Fiku was outstanding, wasn't he? But I still think, Doris for me, I know people won't see this, but there was a couple of things he did in the game that were so good in terms of his footwork that got him over the bar. And actually 2 or 3 of the tries came from things that he'd done about 3 or 4 phases earlier. I still think he's been not only the outstanding player of the weekend, but I think he's been the player of the tournament by some distance, actually. And that's saying something, given the performances of people like Dupont and some of the other Irish guys around him. But I mean, if he's that good now, imagine what he could be like in a few years' time.
Nick, anybody caught your eye?
I'm going to pick Kyle Sinclair, not specifically for rugby reasons, but we spoke to him after the match and he was talking about the contrast with Saturday and the Wales game in 2019, when obviously he got called out by Warren Gatland and took the bait. And when we went to see him at the sort of bottom of the stadium, he was sat on the steps and he came over and said hi. And he said, this time 4 years ago, I was sat on those same steps, crying my eyes out on the phone to my mum. And I was at a crossroads in my career where it could have gone one of 2 ways. I was full of resentment, anger and frustration. And it was either get control of those emotions or give it all up, basically, lose the career, really. And it was brilliant to see him sort of mature and for him, close out a very personal journey. And it's really great to see somebody do that, but also then have the strength of character to come out and say, yeah, this is what's happened and it's good for people to hear it.
Yeah, similarly, I'm going to go for Anthony Watson, 2 years out of the England team and coming back with a try on Saturday. Les, who caught your eye?
Pickout got mine. I think his impact in the game now is through the 80 minutes. It used to be, patches, but now it's 80 minutes. He's such a reliable player from there, but not only reliable, he makes a difference. And he showed that in the weekend.
Yeah. So this weekend, anyway, we've got no Six Nations, but obviously we're back to the Premiership and we've got some key matches coming up now as the season comes towards a conclusion. Northampton go to Bristol, Leicester Bath, the big game at Twickenham, Quins against Exeter, Sale Saris, and Irish are up in Newcastle, will you actually get to go up there and spend a bit of time? I actually caught up with a few Geordie mates of mine in central London on Saturday night, which I'm still paying for. They do like a night out. I'll give them that. They took over the entire city. It was a good night out. It's a big game for you up there, isn't it, Les?
It is. I watched their game at the same time as I was watching. What game was it on the Six Nations? Two TVs going. But they lost a pretty important player in Peterson, their lock. I think he will get a suspension for that. But they adjusted well. I think McCall said they took their foot off the gas a little bit there, but they fight for everything, that group. And up there in their home turf, they're a tough cookie to break. But I would suggest that if we're to go any further, we've got to make sure we win that game.
Yeah, well, now it's time for something else that you don't really want to put in a Google search without putting rugby on it. It's time for you to get tackled by Lawrence.
Tackled.
We put all our honoured and esteemed guests through the same set of questions. Your full name, please, sir.
Leslie James Kiss.
And being an Aussie and now having travelled the world, what's your favourite takeaway, mate?
I'm just an Italian, man. I love that. So,
yeah. Listen, if an Italian lets you take food away, there's something wrong with him, mate. You've got to sit there and have about 15 courses. I mean,
I've got one up the road there. I ring up, he knows what I want straight away, so it works. Yeah.
Good stuff. What do you have for breakfast? You look quite healthy, so must be a granola or a yogurt or something like.
No, well, not quite. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat a lot of dairy stuff, so Vegemite and avocado on toast is my go-to. My strong black coffee. Yeah.
So you're veggie, not quite vegan, but you're veggie, are you?
Yeah, I eat a bit of seafood, so pescatarian more so. But that's been for about 26 years now.
And listen, with a name like yours, what's your nickname? You must have quite a few different variations.
Well, I've had some variations in my time. People notice me. I blink a lot. I make a lot of noises. It's something called Budgie Lighthouse, but more than likely, the one that's mostly used is just Kissy. It's simple.
And the best advice that you've been given doesn't have to be a rugby sense. Could be a life lesson or whatever. But
yeah, if there's something I say to my children, I say be your own best friend. It's a tough world. There's a lot of criticism out there, but you've got to be your own best friend. And I think that's important. Have patience with yourself and all those things. Don't be a conformer. Trust yourself and be your own best friend.
Great advice. Do you have famous people in your contact book? I mean, is Russell Crowe, is he get it now?
I'm not that good of a networker, but
he seems to knows most of the rugby players in Australia. What's
famous? I don't know. Shaun Edwards. Bloody hell. That's getting desperate, is it? Maybe.
And listen, mate, I know you're a modest man, but if there was a film about your life, who would you like to play you? Who would play you really well?
Jason Sudeikis from Ted Lasso. I love the show. He can play me.
Yeah, I live in Richmond. I know you're there a lot. Yeah, they just finished filming it, haven't they? So,
yeah.
Who's the either in your playing career or now in your coaching career? You've obviously come across a lot of great personalities. Who's the funniest person that you've come across?
I think the guys in our club at the moment who've got a bit of humour about it. Maybe a James Stokes. He's quite a funny guy. Probably the funniest guy I've known, but it's my brother Steve. So
it's good. And you obviously have to get up and sing a song every now and again because you can't live in Ireland without either telling a joke, a limerick, or a song. So you've got to have one of each up your sleeve. What is the Les Kiss song?
You're so true with the Irish gigs. You just got to be ready. I pull out the old Freddie Mercury, the old Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a goodie. Yeah. Everyone joins in.
It's a crowd pleaser. Who's the best rugby player of all time for you? Who was the person that made you? And it could be league, it could be union. Who's the person that made you think, wow, this is a game I want to be involved in and I want to play it?
If it went back to my roots in rugby league, Wally Lewis was, I think, imperious. He just dominated the game in every aspect. In rugby, obviously, I coached against the Kiwis with South Africa, with Ireland, but also in Super Rugby against the New Zealand teams. Richie McCall. I just think he had such a presence and an impact on the game in so many ways. I'd say he's the best I've seen.
I can't disagree with you. And for you personally, and you've had some serious highlights, and we mentioned them
earlier
on, what's been your best, most memorable rugby moment? Was it a Grand Slam win? Was it?
It was the Grand Slam thing. I think from a number of reasons. To land in Ireland and to coach with the Irish national team, and then to win that Grand Slam first one for 40 odd years or something. And we go home. Even when we won under, it was special. But when we go home to Dublin, there's 20,000 people on the street there waiting for us, and it meant so much to them. And it sort of made me really appreciate what Northern Hemisphere rugby's about. It's bloody brilliant. But that 08-09 series winning the Grand Slam, definitely.
Well, listen, I think many of the footprints and handprints of that, that you made are still very much there and that team now today. So, Les, thank you for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyable to talk to you. Good luck against Newcastle, especially good luck in the Premiership Cup final. We know you're going to win the partying, but we want the team to win the trophy. And listen, we wish you and London Irish all the very best for the Paddy's Day game against Northampton Saints.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the time.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast. Thanks again to Les Kiss, to Steve Corning and to Nick Purewal. We'll be back next week, although once again, it'll be a little later in the week, on Thursday, I think, as we're bringing you another live special show in partnership with QBE Business Insurance. Our special guest will be the incredibly talented Emily Scarrett. So looking forward to that one. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.